I am Mike Leone here doing my best Adam Levitan impression. Each Monday, Adam goes through the risers and fallers in the best ball market, looking at the average draft position, aka ADP, and lets you know if he's buying or selling. All right, let's get right into it. James Conner is one of the biggest risers on Underdog this past week, going from 92.7 ADP to 89.1, so up nearly 4 spots. Meanwhile, Trey Benson on a couple of the sites has been falling. So we're going to talk about these two in tandem. I do think, what you see in our ranks is we think there might be a tendency for people to over rely on previous year rushing metrics and be overconfident in if a player is still like a very good rusher or a very bad rusher. And that's part of the reason we've been behind the market on James Conner versus, say, like Josh Jacobs. We're ahead of the market on him, he had bad metrics last year. Conner had really good metrics, and we think the market might be chasing those a little bit too much. With that said, we are taking somewhat of an L on Conner, looking at this a little bit closer. Near lock to start the year as the clear primary back. It's an offense that has a good amount of breakout potential. This right now is one of my scarier fades. We've made some adjustments. We're pretty in line now with the underdog market on James Conner, have him running back 24, ADP's running back 24. We're just behind globally on the running back position. So we're behind his overall ADP, but in line with his positional ADP. I do still prefer Trey Benson at cost. He's falling. I think every time this year we hear news that, the rookie isn't where we think they're going to be in the depth chart, and there's kind of tendency to panic. But the draft capital for Benson was very good. He's a very explosive back, archetype-wise, still a guy that I want to bet on. Second riser is Cooper Kupp on Underdog. Goes from 29.1 to 28. Small move up, but if you look at the bigger picture, I'm going to talk about how the wide receiver position on Underdog in general saw their ADPs drop the past week. So relatively speaking, Kupp's rise is even a bit bigger than that. He is someone that we're fading. We're a little bit behind his ADP prior to this rise, and now we're a bit further behind. He's entering his age 31 season, wrong side of the peak for Cooper Kupp. He had a drop off in his catch rate last season, had some health concerns. We saw Puka Nacua take over, have one of the best rookie wide receiver seasons ever. And I just think Cooper Kupp's battling a lot of stuff. I'd rather take a bet on someone like DJ Moore, who we'll talk about on the fallers list, who's 4 years younger, just smashed efficiency-wise, going about the exact same point in drafts, especially on a half PPR site like Underdog. Let's go to a full PPR site, though, and look at Deontay Johnson on DraftKings and FFPC. He's been rising on both those sites quite a bit. On DK, he's the biggest riser in the top 100, going from around pick 81 to pick 77. We've got him as kind of like a fine pick, but I think this is a good spot to talk about the construction of your room and what different players and different archetypes do for you. We're a little bit early on ADP on Deontay Johnson on DraftKings full PPR site, a little bit behind ADP on Underdog half PPR site. I think that's, somewhat negligible. I think the big thing is if you're drafting a team that's only taken 2 or 3 wide receivers through the first 6 rounds, Deontay Johnson is a really good pick for that squad where you're getting pretty reliable target volume. He's never been great on a per target basis, but he's always been great at earning targets. He goes to a situation in Carolina where you've got a declining Adam Thielen, bit of a shaky prospect in Xavier Legette. You don't really have too much at tight end. You've got some fouled wide receiver prospects and Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall as depth. So there's no reason he's not going to come in here and earn a lot of targets right away. So I do think he's really safe. But if you're in drafts where you've gone full zero RB, maybe you've got 4 or 5 wide receivers through round 6, that's where I'm leaning a little bit more into these rookies that go in the same area. You get Michael Thomas, Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy, all these rookies that go somewhat similar to Deontay Johnson. Worthy might be a little bit earlier. I prefer that archetypical bet where you've got a little bit less reliance in terms of week-to-week predictability out of the gate, but you've got a better bet on back-weighted production, second half of the season, breakout, guys that can really smash from an efficiency perspective. So just keep that in mind, the complexion of your room when you're taking, different wide receivers. And another receiver you can take in that range who's a riser is Rashee Rice, who's up to 90.5 on FFPC in their best ball tournament from 95.3. That's a really big rise. He's also up 1.8 spots on underdog. Again, that's pretty notable with wide receivers as a whole falling there. Rice is a great fit again, the opposite of Deontay Johnson. You've already got 5 wide receivers or so. You take Rashee Rice, you're likely missing some games to start the season, but you get that back weighted production. And in best ball, really easy to cover 4, 5, even 6 weeks because your roster is generally pretty healthy from week 1. So in some ways, it's almost, I don't want to say it's a feature instead of a bug to have a guy missing 4 or 5 games out of the gate, but it's definitely not the end of the world where he's not getting hurt during that time period. Your rest of your roster is healthy. And then when bye weeks happen later in the year and your roster starts to get hit with some busts, some injuries, then Rashee Rice comes in, and that's when you really need him. So there hasn't been a huge update in terms of the news of the suspension. As we get a lack of an update, I think people are feeling more comfortable with the risk. I have him at about like 19% exposure on underdog. I think he's a pretty strong pick right now, where if we get news of even like a 4-game suspension, I think the ADP rises to like the 6th round. So you can get a lot of closing line value still here. I like taking the gamble. There's some chance, of course, it doesn't work out. The suspension's 8 games or something, or a little bit longer than we had hoped, and the ADP does fall. But right now, I'm still buying Rashee Rice. Let's go to the fallers. And first one is a guy that we had as a clear fade for a while, and now I'm not as certain. It's CJ Stroud. On DraftKings, he's down from 55.8 to 57.2. But if you look on underdog, that's where I'm more into. I think he's still a fade on DraftKings. I think that price is too early for CJ Stroud when you look at the pass catchers that go on a full PPR site with the bonuses on DK. Just difficult. I think Adam talked about this somewhat on last week's Market Monday, though. The quarterbacks really should be going earlier on underdog, not on DraftKings, given the scoring system. But on DraftKings, he's down to like pick 67. He started BBM at around pick 47. So while he's fallen quite a bit from week over week, he's fallen immensely from the open of this contest. And I think at pick 47 was such a clear fade. For like a pure pocket passer, you need like a Mahomesian type season reliability to be taking a pocket passer at that pick. And I don't think Stroud is there quite yet. If you look at the way Houston operates, they're not in terms of play calling where Kansas City is. Kansas City year over years, basically first in pass rate over expectation. Pretty neutral for Houston last year. Maybe even, I think they were even a slightly negative, but they were right around neutral. But now you get them dropping to pick 67, and all of a sudden I think that those stacks with the Houston players, and this correlates with Stephon Diggs' ADP is falling a lot too. I think it's worth taking him at ADP or a little bit after ADP to make a stack on Houston. Before I was okay not even stacking Stroud. And I do think this is a good lesson about not panicking about getting stack exposures early. Like if you panicked and reached on CJ Stroud because you had Nico Collins, a month ago, and you paid pick 55 on CJ Stroud, that looks really bad right now. So always be a little bit patient. Opportunities may arise. And if they don't, sometimes you just got to be okay with a fade if you don't think the price is right. So I do still think in a vacuum, he's overpriced. You look at Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow going 2 rounds later. Do I prefer Stroud to those guys? Yes. By 2 rounds? Absolutely not. I think it's more of like a round. But again, that gap's fallen from 3 rounds to 2 rounds. It's more tolerable, especially if you get them a little bit after ADP and it is correlated. Quickly, I'll talk about Keon Coleman, who continues to fall because Adam hit on the Buffalo wide receivers last week. But I just want to say, like, for me personally, I think it's a really good buying opportunity on Keon Coleman. I think he's into the 80s on underdog right now. You're talking like this 7-8 turn there. It's a big drop off in terms of wide receiver talent once you get past Keon Coleman. And in general, I think it's a really good opportunity to buy the uncertainty. Like the market's telling us these rookie wide receivers are super important to have as part of your portfolio. but they're overconfident in Keon Coleman not being the one because they didn't love him as a prospect, or there's been some scary comments from the GM. I think it's too early. When we get into a month from now, we might have more conviction on where Ladd McConkey should go relative to Keon Coleman. But right now, I'm looking at a guy who's first pick of the second round, going to a team where there's a ton of potential for someone to have one of those really important seasons with Stephon Diggs' absence, playing with Josh Allen at quarterback. So I'm buying Keon Coleman. All right, last faller to talk about, DJ Moore. He is down 1.2 spots on Underdog, 4.1 spots on FFPC. He's actually at like the 4-5 turn on FFPC. On Underdog, still more like the back end of the third round. I have a weird relationship with DJ Moore. I've loved DJ Moore every single year. And then last year, I was pretty out on him for some systemic reasons with the Chicago offense. And DJ Moore made me look really bad. I was definitely wrong on him. But he also ran super pure at 10 yards per target. So it was a weird season where a combination of being wrong, but a combination of him also running really well. And now we go to this year and you've got way more target competition. I had no target competition last year. Now you've got Keenan Allen brought in. You've got the drafting of Rome Odunze. And I think a lot of people are like, Moore ran pure on efficiency last year, and now he's got more target competition. That efficiency is going to regress. He's got more target competition. I don't think we can justify the same cost this season. And I'm a little bit more open to it, actually, even though I was out on him. I think while the efficiency is going to regress, it's obviously a really good sign that he can put up that type of season, that he's still, that he's in the peak of his career here at age 27 and just a really talented wide receiver. I think that while there is more target competition, it's going to go to basically 3.5 guys. It's going to Allen, Odunze, DJ Moore, and a little bit of Cole Kmet. Like, I think as long as people are healthy, it's all going there. And the other thing that we tend to forget about, yes, increased target competition, but the contingent upside is huge, where if one of those guys goes down, now all of a sudden, all this target competition we're worried about is completely out the window if either Odunze or Keenan Allen misses time. But the big thing for me is you get Justin Fields out of there. You get Caleb Williams in there. I know Caleb Williams can move around, but any change from Justin Fields is huge. Fields, one of the highest sack rates that you're going to get, one of the highest scramble rates that you're going to get. And the teams also, the way they're calling plays around him, are going to lean to the run. So you get a little bit of run heavy play calling. You also get a very high percentage of called pass plays turning into non-pass attempts with Justin Fields. Removing that is going to increase the team volume available. So that cancels out some of the reduction in target share that DJ Moore is likely going to have. And from a team scoring standpoint, we weight the average team total. There's a spread available for every single game. If you look at the team total for every single game, we're weighting weeks 1 through 14 into that formula, and the playoff weeks 15 to 17. And Chicago does have a favorable playoff schedule. That brings their average weighted team total to 23.3. The touchdowns that we're projecting off of that, we're actually projecting them a little bit light, and we're still above market on a lot of Bears. So I just think this offense is undervalued in general. If Caleb Williams, he's one of the better QB prospects that we've had. There's a ton of skill player talent across the board for Chicago. So pretty much just buying this offense in general. That extends to DJ Moore as he's falling right now. In general, wide receivers are falling on Underdog. Couple notes on this. First, with the fast puppy release, that ADP is mixed in. Was talking with Pat Thorman and Justin Herzig about this before recording. And I think that will affect the ADP on BBM. So just keep that in mind, where these wide receivers that have fallen, they might rise again, because the type of people that draft in the fast puppies are generally the type of people that are drafting wide receivers earlier. So that's first note. Second note, where the ADP is now, you're starting to see, like, here are some of the fallers of, I said a lot of wide receivers are falling. Xavier Worthy, Ryan Thomas Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, Keon Coleman, who we just talked about, Ladd McConkey. Those are the guys falling on Underdog. I think Rome Odunze is down a little bit as well. I know he's down on DraftKings for sure. These are the receivers that, we're going in at the 5-6 turn or middle round 6, and now they're bleeding into the 7th round with a couple like JSN and Keon into the, getting towards the 7-8 turn. I think oddly, as the receivers fall, it makes it easier to take a non-wide receiver pick early, knowing that in the 7th round, you're going to get a pretty good breakout bet at the wide receiver position. And the wide receiver scarcity is always weird, where like the earlier the wide receiver goes, the harder is the detour. It's not like a zigzag thing. It's actually, you have to be somewhat in line with the market there. So just note that as you're plotting out your drafts, I do think seeing what's available to you in round 7 to 8 is going to impact whether you're like, can I take Josh Jacobs in the early 5th round? Or do I have to go wide receiver? Well, knowing that you can get Jackson Smith and Jigba, Brian Thomas Jr. at that 6-7 turn is going to, make you feel a little bit better about taking Josh Jacobs. If you're not sure if the ADPs rise again on these guys and you're looking at Tyler Lockett, Cortland Sutton at that point, then it's a little bit tougher. You might want to just go wide receiver and ignore the value on a guy like Josh Jacobs in the 5th round. Along with the wide receivers falling, rookie stuff is falling a lot on Underdog. Again, this could be impacted by the puppy. The same people that like drafting wide receivers draft a lot of the fast puppies, draft a lot of rookies. So we might see this reverse itself. But 10 of the 20 biggest fallers on Underdog this week in ADP are rookies. 0 of the 20 biggest risers are rookies. If we extend this to running backs as well as the wide receiver position. And I think it's a good reminder. I think basically every year, I shouldn't say every year, but last year, a similar trend happened where a lot of rookie fever on Underdog in June, and then we got a dip, and I remember last year was like, oh, we got to chase JSN, we got to chase Addison, some of these guys, and then there ended up being an opportunity. Same thing this year where I had like no Lad McConkey for a while. I've gotten him a few times in the 7th round now. So just a good note to keep in the back of your mind for next season as well as the current season, that sometimes these ADP shift. Try not to panic too much. You do want to adjust to the market, but sometimes we do see a global shift and you'll see some opportunities that you were worried about fading before. And now all of a sudden you can get in on it on more tolerable prices. Okay, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Market Monday. Hopefully I did a passable job filling in for Adam Levitan. Again, make sure you check out the Established to Run Best Ball package. You can get ranks for all the formats that I touched on today and tons of content around that. Best of luck, everybody.